What's up, everybody? It's Paul Miller of the Free Time Free Spill podcast, and I'm with a special guest today. He was on the previous episode, Philosophy and Innovation. His name is Rajiv. He'll introduce himself. Hey, what's up, man?
Thank you. Thank you again for welcoming me. I'm always happy to be a part of this conversation. I mean, I always love having a conversation with you, Paul Miller. It's an awesome experience. Thank you so much. Thank you
Yeah,
so
man.
much. And hi, folks, for those who are listening.
So, how your day went? It's Sunday. It's a big day. So, how your day went, man?
It's been productive. Been pushing my blogs and my podcasts and all the stuff. I gotta do the thing.
Yeah.
Been working on creating. Is just I have the need to always create, and it's an addiction now because there's nothing much I can do. It's like there's no choice in the matter.
Would you consider yourself a perfectionist?
Absolutely. uh but in a good way. I mean, uh I've always heard the social media how many people degrade the word, perfectionism. Form is a form of insecurity. For me, in my opinion, is that no, it doesn't really matter if it works for you. It works for you. I mean, that's the thing. For me, it really works for me because coming from an artist standpoint, when you're drawing or you're making a piece of music, um, there's always that need for creating, and sometimes what you've done, the output product of that is not satisfying. It's always a nice thing to just improve upon it. That's my perfectionistic
Yeah.
personality. Is like a habit now. I mean, I can't really get over it. It's just that it's like second nature to me already.
Yeah,
So
you
yeah.
gotta. I'm learning that you gotta be good at all things, like especially like if it's in music, you gotta be good in all the areas in music
Yeah, yeah, I do agree.
and
I
marketing.
do agree. Yeah.
So
And of
you write
course,
music?
oh yeah, I love music. I mean, lately I've been, um, if there's the word called movie binge watching and all that stuff, I've been sound binging or something. I don't know if that's the exact word.
Yeah.
I've been binging on albums basically. I learned this from my bandmates before, when I used to jam with some few friends of mine from India. We There was always an advice like, you should listen to the entire album to know how the album came about and stuff like that. And even during the earlier years when I used to dance Michael Jackson, um, I used to binge on all of the albums. I mean, I don't care whether the songs are good, songs are bad. I mean, it's Michael Jackson. I mean, there's no song that is never bad. I mean, it's just a matter of spending time and listening. And I love how the music is created. And it's a good habit to get into album binging because one is, when you're listening to a single, you only get the taste of what the single provides. But when you're listening to the album, you get to see the good stuff. And of course, there's also the stuff uh, that passes your taste, or even opens your palette to other styles. I mean, that's the one thing that I really appreciate in album binging. And it's an amazing experience to always binge on album because one is, like I said, you're peeling the layers of what the art provides. It's like looking at the painting in five different ways. And of course, the artist has painted it in some way. In music, the art is it's very abstract, and as you peel each layer, you get the piece of personality coming from I'm sure you agree with me. Coming from a musician, we all have layers, and there are some people who write long form poems, and in order to cut that out and make an album, you gotta cut this piece and you gotta put this
Yeah.
piece. Is very
Editing.
artistic. Yeah,
It's
it's that
editing.
editing portion. Yeah, And that's the fun part. I really love about album, because like I said, it's all about cutting through cutting through the person, and you get to know the person on a human level, and it's like that emotional connection, and each song always brings an emotional connection once you listen to it over and over again. So yeah, I love music.
Yeah. So, what's the history of music? Like early history, like how far back it goes. Like
uh History of music, like, is this the general question, or this is
like
my
I know,
my question on
like
how?
yeah, like cuz you study music and stuff, like you went to school, you like had a
Mhm.
major in music. So like
Yeah,
what's like the history, like a history lesson?
the history lesson is, it's always it started in the Western ear. I think it began in the earlier, I think it was pre-Renaissance period, and then of course we have the Baroque period, and the classical period, which is of course Mozart, and the Romantic period, which is Beethoven, and then there are a lot of eras when it comes to the music. And for me personally, the opportunity that I missed was studying jazz. I mean, for me, jazz is the missed opportunity that I didn't really get to sing, study. But aside from that, looking back at the classical music and the background, there's so many things that I appreciate about the history of music. And it's like learning arts, basically, starting from the basics with anatomy. In music, it's fun uh, because you enjoy the how history of music was built from the earlier monotonous sounding of course the Gregorian chants, and then from the Gregorian chants that was a single melody, and then of course we have um, uh, other melodies coming in, and then it forms a triad, and then of course you got the chords, and then after the classical period, no, Gregorian chants, and then the classical period, the Baroque period, where there were counter melodies, changing of the tone, where a single melody has like a question and answer kind of thing. And then it gets into the classical period where Mozart, absolute genius as he is, takes it to another level by adding techniques and other stuff that of course listeners haven't heard. And then comes into the romantic period where we have Beethoven. The one thing interesting about Beethoven is he is like the pivoting person between classical and romantic, because a large portion of his music, half of his music from the earlier years was very classical, and then of course it gets into the romantic, which is interesting. And and then we get other all these other music like Haydn, and and then it goes of course to, as mentioned in the previous conversation, we had John Cage, which is the modern and postmodern, and saying which John Cage, and now we got artists, like we have a lot of artists, a lot of genres. But then the history of music is phenomenal. I mean, some of it I don't really remember anymore,
Don't they
but
have a
those are the
burlesque
things.
Q, or how you say it? Burlesque Q or something?
Burlesque,
Burlesque.
yeah, burlesque. I think that's modern. I think that's the Western introduction. That's more American, or I think it's Eastern or American. I don't really remember exactly, but
Okay.
that's also an interesting music that we haven't delved into. So yeah, but yeah,
Awesome,
music
man.
music is amazing.
Where is it at today? Like music in general.
Today, music is um, music is really all over the place. I mean, now everybody has their own taste, so I can't really say that personally. My taste is, of course, jazz, funk, and a little bit of hard rock, a little bit of heavy metal. But that's my taste, you know. And everybody has got their own taste, and everybody is also pushing the limits, you know. Now with guitars like Steve Vai pushing techniques, and Victor Wooten with the slap, and Larry Graham, of course, who originated slap. Bass, I love bass a lot because um, that's where a lot of magic happened. That is the first instrument that I fell in love with aside from the guitar. I mean, uh, bass is saying, you know, the four strings. It doesn't matter whether it's the upright or the electric bass. I always love bass.
Yeah,
And although my voice is tenor, is kind of weird, but yeah, that's um, with the situation of today's music. You cannot really segregate a particular taste because everybody's got their own, and I also have my own combination.
yeah, yeah. I know, like with music, we all know what it is today because we're like a part of it, and
Hmm.
we all growing and stuff. We living in the present moment, and that's just how music is right now. We are a reflection of the past into now.
Hmm. Studying music, one thing I wanted to add in when I was studying theory and counterpoint and all these other good stuff is that the learning lesson there was there are a lot of things that are still present in today's music that you cannot really erase from the past, like the classical rules of part writing and stuff like
The
that.
theory,
Although, yeah, although musicians, some musicians don't think about it. It's like a subconscious thing when they apply it in the music. In the modern era, especially when music flourished, like the rock and roll music and all these other good stuff, there are a lot of things that rules are applied. You know, with the series of classical music where you have the part writing in music, you don't really see it. Um, but then there's those certain applications that um, are there, and of course it's all about the perspective of how you see it. You know, if in an academic stand, you have to view it in an academic way, and I think that was our training, how we dissect the music and dissect the form, and see how it went from thing. And especially with the rules of harmony, where you're taking your music from one direction to the other. It's like, you know, you're starting with a home and center key, and then of course you're getting back into the home. Sometimes you modulate, and you know, create these interesting stuff like the journey between from home to back to home is interesting, where you take the chords and stuff like that, and then you add the melody. It's really an interesting thing. And with the rules that I think my professor mentioned is that um, when we studied it, we had to go through it in order to understand it, not to internalize it and to say that is ought to be the standard of what music is supposed to be. It's like uh, taking that piece of knowledge and keeping it like a guideline to how you can improve, you know. And that's one thing. Music is really interesting, how it adds into music, because you know, when you're creating something, um, you don't really think about the rules as much. But then when you're in that, when you have the space, and you really like to dissect it, you know, and you like to see it in an academic way, it becomes interesting. It opens a lot of doors and a lot of possibilities, especially when you're experimenting with counter counter melodies and stuff like that. And if you want to you add those in your music, and just to create that dynamic, it's just an amazing way of expressing the music and bringing in that music and bringing in that vibe. It's just that there's something about the rules that doesn't have to apply to all. It can apply to a certain portions of the certain portions of the song or the piece that you're performing. So that's why one thing I really appreciate.
so you love songwriting. You do a lot of songwriting.
Before Yeah, and you might laugh at this one though, is that my earlier songwritings were based off of heart breakups and all the stuff that I've gone through. It's
It's,
kind of
it's,
strange, yeah.
it's like
And
the romantic era.
yeah, I mean, not more or less like sometimes I always criticize myself, especially as an artist. I always criticize myself for the music that I make, and I think it's like that feeling where you in your head you have this particular piece of music. Like I mentioned earlier, I've been inspired by James Brown, Prince, and Michael Jackson, and in my head I like to make music like that, make you dance and groove. But then when I sit down with the guitar or the piano or anything, any instrument that I have next to me, I kind of make the weirdest definition of the music. Is like I consider it like a Taylor Swift moment or something, you know. And that's that's coming to think of it, that's like yeah, that's one of the main reasons why I really sometimes hate doing what I do, because you
It's
know
so good when
yeah, I
you make
mean,
them.
yeah, I mean, it's that's why I like to listen nowadays more than play, because if I play, it's like the counterpart of what I really want to do. Like, uh, listening to songs like Musicology, where you're getting up and, you're grooving and you're dancing and, you're feeling it. And then when you sit down with the piece of music and then you're playing some chords that sing, and then you're creating, it feels like Taylor Swift moments, make you, it's either a song about a breakup, and it's like, wait, I don't really want to make a breakup song in the back of my head, but it so happened that that's the byproduct of what the thing. It's like a counter thing. So yeah, I really. That's one main reason why I hate making music, is because it's not really that I don't love it. It's like I just don't really like making songs that
You
are
don't
so
want to contradict
depressing.
yourself.
Yeah, in a way, yeah, that's true. And yeah, and I look back at my categories of music, like it's mostly all about lovey-dovey stuff, which I'm a romantic, I'll admit it, but my main intention is, ever since I heard James Brown music, like Victor Wooten, my intention to my music is to do stuff that makes you want to go dance. You want to go boogie, and you want to go, feel
Yeah.
that rhythm, feel that and and every time I sit down, it's just that it's like it's not really a writer's block. I have that I have the ability to create. But the funny thing is, uh what I create is like a contradiction, which, as I mentioned, it's repetitive. But yeah, uh it's
You made a
it's an
good blog
interesting
today.
thing. Yeah, I mean, it's always fun. I like writing, but it's just that I hate the byproduct of what I create. That artsy kind of attitude, that perfectionist attitude. But I don't mean it in a way that I don't like the music. I mean, I love the music. That's why I made it. But it's just that I don't like to talk about stories like that. I want to talk about dancing, grooving. Feeling
Yeah.
the day, feeling the thing.
And you play
Jiving with
guitar. You
everybody.
play guitar really good, man. Like when we was rapping, I can't wait for the other episodes to release though.
Yeah. Well, we were jamming on some stuff. I mean, hopefully that would saying that would not see the light of day, because as an artist, I really want to walk out of that life. I mean, I love being a musician. Don't get me
Well, you
wrong,
play good though,
and
man.
yeah.
You really
Wait
are a
till you
star,
see
like
me
in real
playing the
life.
bass. I don't mean to be an arrogant. I don't want to come off like an arrogant ass, but wait till you see me play the bass. That is where I take it to the next level. That's where thing. And yeah, I mentioned this in my earlier podcast episode as well. Is that what got me hooked into the bass was my dad. When I was in India, uh, I was most of the time, I think I luckily got this acoustic guitar at home, and I was not really much of a musician. I was only during the period of period which I called my lost years, that was where my creativity in music flourished. And then when I was doing my thing, when I was discovering and saying, I was playing a lot. I never really had the feel for the guitar. I mean, I don't know if you agree with me. Like certain instruments, you have the certain connection. Like when you connect with the music, that's where you come up with the song. You know, some people when they play drums, they put their anger into it, and that's how they connect with the instrument. And for me, I do not have that like that. I've never built that relationship with the acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
Although I tried my best to jam for 5 hours, sometimes 6 hours, but I still don't have that feel. And then when my dad came home and then he had the bass guitar, he had a custom made bass guitar, his first custom made bass guitar. I saw that thing, as a listener, I've never seen a bass guitar, and I never knew the value of a bass guitar ever since my dad bought that bass. And then the moment I held it and it was in my shoulders, and of course playing the strings for the first time, and feeling it, it's like there's that instant, that eureka moment, that eureka moment where I think I'm in love, that kind of feeling, because it's um it's that connection. I think I've developed that connection, and over the years I've I've experimented. A young bass player normally starts playing the plucking style, which is with the two fingers. When I started out playing the bass, I never really thought of it that way. So I started, of course, I went to, as an avid learner, you always go to YouTube. YouTube is always the best friend, you
Yeah.
know. So when I went to YouTube and then I said bass tutorials and all that stuff, and I started listening to Victor Wooten and Stanley Clark, and of course they had that thumping technique, and they got that thump, and then they got that blocking technique, which is somewhat imitating the drums, with the thump as the bass, and then the pluck as the snare. So with that technique, I got into that, and that is the way I communicated my music, because uh, that is where I started falling in love with the bass, because it's nice. It's a nice feeling. You got that. It's like you're walking down the street, and boom, boom. You, when I play the guitar, I don't have that connection with that. When even though I can imitate it, but in with the addition of the bass and the treble, I don't really have that feel. I don't know if you got me though. It's like that feel.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean with the bass, with only four strings, you got boom, boom, tak. Even thinking of it is like you really wanna, you wanna experiment that. Boom, boom. And once you build that, that foundation, you feel like, wow, I can run with this. Like, I love to run with this. I want to go with this. I want to dance. I want to do that. I want to shimmy and stuff like that. And that's the feeling that I love about sing. that's
Yeah.
that's the
Bass.
feeling that I love with bass. And I can't deny it. It's an amazing
I
feeling.
want to hear you play bass.
How long have I been playing bass?
I want to hear you play it.
uh, I mean, I wish, because my bass is a bit sing. The last time I had a conversation with my bass guitar died on me. This is a funny story. Um, we were having this competition here in our college, and we had this battle of the bands kind of set up, and it was in college we had like inter schools, so we were in the school of liberal arts and human sciences, and then we were competing against dentistry. We had teachers education on one end, and we had nursing, and we had all these other schools, technology and all these stuff. And we just went in, we I went in, and there was this unfortunate scene before the final show, where we I, I had an interest. We were heading towards the studio, and then my case at that time was a soft case, which was already flapping out, because it was torn, and literally water could spill over at the base. And when I was traveling to the jam studio, it was funny that things were okay. The bass was okay. Everything was okay. And then the day of the performance, just before the performance, we had a pre practice session in a studio nearby, which opened early. And I was playing bass. I was playing my bass, of course. And then, unfortunately, just right in the middle of the practice, the bass died, which was kind of weird. And it kind of we tried to put batteries and all that stuff because it was an active bass, so it had some batteries and all that stuff. And then we did all this stuff, and then unfortunately it didn't really play. But luckily, during that performance, there was a bass lying around in our studio. So nobody picked it up, nobody was talking about it, and nobody was asking for it. So it was so I felt lucky at that time. So I took that bass and I just used the strap, and then I went in and we performed our hearts out. And I think the theme of that time was Linkin Park, and the vocalist from Cranberry. So it was a dedication. The genre was hard rock, and it was dedicated to Chester Bennington, and of course the vocalist from Cranberry. I don't know what's her name though. Uh, Dolores, I think Dolores something. So we played Points of Authority. If you know the song Points of Authority, any Linkin Park saying shout out to Linkin Park to listeners out there. You know, we
Hey, pause a
I
second.
was playing Points of Authority. Yeah, and it was a fun experience. I mean, that was the first time I performed in Battle of the Bands, and it was an amazing experience. And I think we won. Yeah, I remember we won first prize, and it was it was a feeling like yesing. And after that, I never really touched the bass anymore because, of course, the bass that I got home never really worked anymore. So
You still have
the
it?
last time I still have it, it's somewhere here, but it's not in working condition
How
anymore
how
because
long
I
you
think
been playing? How long you been playing?
uh, from 2009 till around 20 2017 or 18, somewhere around that time.
2009?
Yeah, 2009. Yeah, that's where the journey began, and it's a fun journey. I love the journey.
Yeah. You had any question for me?
Uh, I'd love to learn more about funk. I know, uh,
Funk music?
yeah, funk music is James Brown. I know James Brown is the one who started this thing and this journey, and uh, I really love funk music. I'm always obsessed with how it thing because when I was studying music, of course, there was a difference to the field because classical music you have these rules and all these regulations, you know. And when I spent my time doing research on funk music, I really found that funk music is really interesting in so many ways. It's not just based on harmony, voicings, and stuff like that. It takes the rule of it takes jazz. There are some certain principles of jazz that it takes, but it disconnects from all the other thing. And this is how I learned it. Is that when I was doing my research, is that uh, the music with jazz. The one thing I love about jazz is that well, with jazz there are so many rules. Like you know, you have rule for this voice leading, that voice leading, and all these stuff, and you cannot use particular rules. And jazz itself has its own theory, and and it's interesting to take a dive into that theory. But one thing I've learned is that when funk came about, is that they wanted to disconnect with the jazz. They love the sound, of course, and they wanted to disconnect with the rules, and they just want to groove. So the emphasis of funk music is the conversation between the bass and the drums. Like I mentioned earlier, you have the kick and the snare, which Larry Graham perfected. That became like the basic guideline of funk music. And of course, we had the Motown guys like Stevie Wonder and all these stuff. And I really love funk music. I mean, and then coming to the future, I mean, when funk became popular, of course, we got Prince, and then we got Michael Jackson, which had a different definition. More of his definition was in pop, and then now we have the earlier 2000s is of course Jay-Z and Kanye West, which is a different version of funk, which is of course the same, and same music as you, the line of
Yeah.
rap and stuff. I mean, and that's why I really love diving deep into that, because I really love to learn about sing.
Yeah.
Although not much theory and stuff like that. No no time to crack your head over theory and all that stuff. But
I read a lot of books and stuff, like books, like just growing into it, like being in America and like listening to that music growing up and stuff, like just having a love for it and hearing the flavor. It's like flavor in your ear. That's a song called Flavor in Your Ear. I think by Craig Mack. And like funk, I think about a funk song, like it's called I don't even know if it's really funk, but it says we got the funk. You gotta have
oh
that funk.
yes, Parliament Funk. Yeah. Oh man, I used to jam with those guys. I mean, I used to jam to their tunes. I mean,
Yeah.
the one George George, I forgot his name. Yeah, something George. I forgot his name. Parliament Funk. That is where Bootsy Collins and all. Bootsy used to be a bass player for James Brown, and
Yeah.
he uh, his formula to funk was much more different, because um, with funk, what I've known was the formula of how James Brown makes funk is that uh, I mean Bootsy's version, which James Brown taught him, was of course the emphasis is on the 1, 2, 3, 4, especially when it's a 4/4 time. You got 1, 2, 3, 4. So you got that in the beginning. So you gotta go with that.
Mm,
And then when you
mm.
got the bass line, boom, ta, boom, boom, ta, boom. It starts with that.
Yeah.
It either starts with the kick or it's either starts with the sing, but it has to have that emphasis, and that is the reason why I love funk so much. Is if you think of any other piece of music, you think about ballads, like I mentioned earlier, the music that I used to make, like love songs and all that stuff. you know, you my the way I define it is like I always search for that That's why I use I it that emphasis that I mentioned is like 1, 2. That gets you there. That gets you
Yeah.
grooving. And in funk, going back to ballads, I mean, the song is repetitive because it's all about a guy crying over a girl and all that stuff. And then there's no sense of, oh man, the song, the predictability is the fact that it's gonna go over and over and over and over to the point that it becomes too boring. It's I always search for that is that
You gotta have something different. Like
uh,
you gotta have something
and
different.
and looking for that is like, imagine someone. It'll be interesting though to hear if someone who's tuning in and listening to us would listen to sing and come up with a very slow I love you," and then oof, that would be like, it'd be like, the lyric will be like I love you from the moon and back and all that stuff, and then out of the blue go oof, I don't need you anymore.
Ooh.
It'd be like, ooh, this is some good stuff. you know
Ooh.
so, and probably a breakup song where, for me, I do not know if for me personally, I'm not being negative or something. It's just that my creative juice, when it comes to me sitting down with the guitar, because I have a classical guitar, is that I do not have that ability to create funk. I don't think the guitar is communicating the same way I can communicate the way I want to speak. And I do not know if you understood what I said there, but what I meant is like, when I want to write uh, a story, or write a thing, the paper is the thing that I want to write. But instead of writing with faulty with a nice fountain pen, I write I write it with the flimsy pens, and that's how in my head I like to make funk music. But when I sit down and transcribe it to the guitar, it's not coming out that way. It's like, it's those depressing the uh, depressing divorce moments with, you fell in love with the girl and stuff like that and all that stuff. So yeah,
Yeah. It's not about the
it's
pen
really
though.
hard.
It's not about the pen. It's
Yeah.
about like how you write it. But you
No, I
just don't
mean
be
my
so self-critical. You'll get it.
yeah. No, I mean my metaphor for the pen is the reason. I think it's the instrument. Like that's what I meant. The instrument is
Oh,
the faulty pens is of course the instrument. So like I mentioned, when I started playing the bass, of course it was like the best fountain pen verse, and of course the best
you want it
paper.
to sound like funk?
Yeah. But when I sit down with a classical guitar, it's like I'm using a flimsy pen where the top is crimped out, the nib is broken and all that stuff, and then the piece of paper that I want
Okay,
to
I
write
see what
is
you're
not
saying.
even, yeah, the
I see what you're saying.
transcribing.
I was thinking you
That's
was talking about writing, like writing a
yeah.
song.
No, I mean I meant it metaphorically because yeah, I mean every time I sit down with the guitar, I think it's the instrument that doesn't really want to communicate the way it is, or the usage of the instrument.
Yeah.
So for me, if you give me a bass guitar in 5 seconds, I probably come up with a funky bass line. But if you give me a guitar, I'll probably give you a love song by the end of the conversation. But yeah, you know, even though I like to think of it like, I
Be
like to
a
not
pop
think of,
star, man.
yeah, I don't really want to consider myself Taylor Swift. I want to be honest, if I were to get back into the music scene, I'd like to get a band and I'd like to get the horns. Basically, I don't know. I have a fascination for horns because horn section is really an interesting thing because I think the large portion of that is it communicates. I mean, it's a lovely communication. So yeah, I mean, horns can come up with lines, and then the bass line can improvise that as well, or imitate that. And it's thing. And one thing I like about bass is uh, it can imitate. It can imitate funk horns or any horns for that matter. And one thing was, I'm also versatile. I just don't mean to say that just because I play bass, I play funk. There was a period in my life where I used to listen to Black Sabbath, and of course, Black Sabbath's bass player Geezer Butler plays the bass in a different way. So he has his own technique, and of course, his technique was uh, much more on imitating the guitar as it is to a regular bass player, where it's sitting on that chord. Let's say the chord is like a D major chord. Of course, he's sitting on top of that. But in Geezer Butler's way, when Tony Iommi, of course, the guitar player, plays a chord, he plays the line like he plays an over thing, and it's very interesting. I mean, and the way he expresses it in such a way, it creates that metal, that heavy metal hard rock um, sound, which is really interesting. So yeah, I'm diversified into those type techniques. And then of course, one of my favorite bass players from the progressive era is of course Rush's bass player Geddy Lee. Any Rush fans out there, shout out to you guys, because I mean, yeah, the, Rush is an amazing band. I mean, it's a three-piece band. I've always wanted. It, uh, Thanks to Geddy Lee, I think he's the main reason why I have long hair. Had not been for him,
Geddy
I
Lee.
don't have long hair. Geddy Lee, and of course, I think I have the Stevie Wonder shades. But I always like Geddy Lee's thing, and Geddy Lee. Geddy Lee. One thing I like about Geddy Lee is he just doesn't play bass. I mean, he plays keyboard, he plays bass, and he sings. And that's the one thing I love about that guy, because he does a lot of things and a lot. And aside from Alex Lifeson, of course, plays the guitar and complements the guitar. We got Neil Peart, of course. He recently passed away. But with the trio effect and the beauty of how these guys come together, and it's just a phenomenal. It's just phenomenal to watch them. Basically, I really appreciate the way they do their music, and yeah,
What's that group called?
it's Rush. they're from Canada, and phenomenal. There were, if you Google Rush, I think there are some photos where they dominated the double neck, which of course I think started from Jimmy Page, of course the 12 string when Jimmy Page performed Stairway to Heaven. I'm sure everybody who's listening also tune into Stairway to Heaven, and that's one thing, you know. Um, Rush, they have a double neck bass, and you know it's just phenomenal.
How
Think of
Stairway
it,
to
you know.
Heaven? What's the
Stairway to
lyrics?
Heaven is Led Zeppelin.
Led Zeppelin.
Um,
I was
you
thinking
know,
about the
there's a
OJ's.
lady,
I was thinking
there's a
about,
lady who shows all that glitters is gold, and she's buying a
but don't
stairway
say the
to
whole
heaven.
thing. Don't
Yeah,
just say a little bit because you don't want copyright.
yeah. I mean, I'm just singing the lyrics. I mean, I'm not even playing the guitar. But yeah, I mean, that's the melody. But yeah, I mean, talking about Led Zeppelin, that's another like episode. Basically, you know, as this conversation unfolds, I mean, I
Yeah,
listen to a lot of stuff, and I love. I mean, I'm always open to listen to a lot of stuff, and
dude,
yeah,
you're smart, man. You got
I just
you got a lot to talk about, man. You had any question for me?
um, I mean, tell me more about the stuff that tell me more about hip hop and history and stuff like
I mean, I just know stuff about the books. It's just like how we learn stuff like online and stuff. Like we learn stuff from everybody and stuff, and like hip hop. Like, what you want to know? Like the history or
that. Okay, this since you mentioned, I had a question. I have a question.
what?
Uh, if you were to define your style, technique, or whatever they call it, what is do you consider yourself
Oh,
self an imitation of someone that you listen to, or you want to be original? Because I think there are a lot of hip hop artists who have content, like even musicians for that matter, who follow content from other musicians, but they change it in such a way that it when you listen to it firsthand, you know it's okay. That's them. You know, it's not the imitation of the music.
yeah.
So,
I
do you
don't know.
consider yourself an OG, or you wanna? Your intention is to be from OG, from imitation to something different. You know.
Yeah, I just go with my regular voice, but like I'm unique. Everybody's unique in their own ways, from the different styles, the different content that they put out, the lyricism. Um, Me, I don't even know who I sound like, but I'm sure there was someone before me that did it before me that that made music.
But if you were personal, I mean, of course, you've had your fair share of listening to other musicians
Yeah,
before you started.
hip
Who would you
hoppers.
compare yourself? Who would you compare yourself to first? Like first thing that comes into your mind when you started out, you know, and then who was that, like that main motivator? Like, hey, I like his style, and I think I wanna I wanna dive into his style. Like,
I say Tupac and Nelly.
oh wow, Tupac. Oh wow, Tupac is an amazing. Yeah, I mean, two two tracks that I love from Tupac is of course Dear Mama
Yeah,
and
I love Dear
California
Mama.
Love. And
California.
California. Then I love the music video. The music video is insane. It's like some Mad Max thing
Chris
going on.
Tucker
It's
is
like,
in there.
what's going on? And then, you know, I don't know how they shot that video, but that was insane, you know. And
The videography was great and the acting and stuff, and
oh
before
yeah,
the music
but
video.
man, I really like the. So I think that was the first time when I saw that music video. That was the first time they used a fish lens. There was a. I think I remember Dr. Dre, and they were kicking the fish lens. It's like, whoa, this is like they got the Mad Max thing going on, and then they got the fish lens going on. It's like, whoa, this videography is insane. I want to go to California just to listen to that song. I think I remember the first time I heard that song, it was on loop for almost like 3 or 4 weeks. And every time I have an LSS, is like I take that LSS to the next level. I mean, it's all on repeat. I mean, LSS is of course Last Song Syndrome, and I always listen to like,
Yeah.
oh man, that's cool. Sometimes I get analytical now with the latest songs that I've been listening to. Is always analytical now. After coming from, of course, graduating from music, uh, uh, that habit of being analytical. But
Congratulations,
yeah,
man. Congratulations.
cheers, cheers,
What
cheers.
you gonna do? What you gonna do after, like when the COVID and stuff goes away? Like, what you think about doing through music?
Uh, to music, I mentioned this in my my latest episode. Of course, after graduation, is 4+1 years in music. Season 3. I mentioned that um I wanna take my life to a different level. I mean, I've done a fair share of my I've enjoyed a fair share of hours with music and arts, and as a human being, as a person, a human being, I really I want to step into another level. I mean, I want to go somewhere else where I've never dived into, like entrepreneurship, because the first time I picked up the Rich Dad Poor Dad book, that's where I said, okay, I want to try this. And, with the economy and stuff like that, things are going to get tough. And of course, um, I got to look out for myself in the future. I mean, I got to sing. And my plan is to venture out and do venture out into entrepreneurship, hopefully, and starting up projects, and of course, podcasting is also one new thing, and I'm actually a new guy to the podcasting world, and
Do you
I
do
love
so
how
much
it
work?
yeah. I mean, I love to open my that's the reason why I like to open up my opportunities from things that I am not comfortable with. um earlier on uh earlier on I started blogging, which I have a little bit of fear because my English is in typing is not really good. And podcasting is also a new thing, as mentioned earlier. I mean, I'm enjoying this. I really enjoy editing it. I enjoy listening to the conversations. It feels like I'm a part of that com- communication, and the marketing aspects of a business, where you come up with creative ideas to reach out to people who are, those are the things. And entrepreneurship on one hand is, of course, I have a mentor who is an entrepreneur for 8 years, and he and I we've been through hell for almost, not really been through hell. We've always been in touch for almost uh so 2 or 3 years, uh and he also taught me a thing or two about entrepreneurship and the life and the struggles, and of course the successes. And I like to venture out into that life. I mean, for the future, for my future.
Yeah,
In terms
podcasting
of
is fun.
music,
It
yeah, I
is
do
fun
agree.
podcasting.
Yeah, I do agree. Podcasting is fun because it, although it's new to me, it's like uh it's having conversation. I mean, I'm a shy type, and I don't really like being in video much. It's rare that I'm in videos. Even in videos, I'm still a shy guy, so it's funny.
You that
But in
shy, man?
audio, yeah, it's weird. I know, but when you're listening to me in audio, I could like talk for hours and hours and
Yeah.
hours, and it's only the brain's capacity of the person who I'm talking to is, but and it's a nice way to express myself. I mean, to me, podcasting saved me from my depression because I got to express my thing, my past, my thoughts, and all these things, and I really enjoy it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it's a fun journey, and I'm still improving, and I also want. It's always a fun journey.
So,
So yeah,
what would you say?
wait, we're
Like,
good with the episode.
yes. But
Wait, that awkward moment there.
I
Edit
wanted to
out this
ask
part. Suddenly
I
we
wanted to
had an
ask a
awkward
question.
silence.
I wanted to ask a question
Sure,
before we go. What's
sure.
something positive you would like to leave the audience with, like some words of advice and positivity to for them to listen to when they if they hear it.
Uh, Keep experimenting. Never get comfortable with what you know. Try new things. And meet people. Um, uh, there's a lot of things that I could share, but if in a simplified way is just live your life the way you want it. It's good to ask questions. It's
Right.
good to learn, uh, but never lose your identity uh, while learning, because that's the one thing. That's the one thing that makes us unique in our own best way, is that we find different ways of expressing ourselves, and yeah, and we we need to just keep doing what we do. Uh, and you got to know that if it doesn't really work for you, uh, go on to the next, move on to the next. I mean, there's nothing much that you could do to make it work. If that's how you see it, then you just proceed with what makes you, happy. And the definition of happy is, of course, not by basing it off of someone else's thoughts. It's all about you. You got to feel,
Yeah, it's great to hear,
you
man.
yeah. And if need be, you need to lock yourself away for some time, and discover yourself and know what you want in all aspects of your life. You do that, and that's one thing. You get to learn and experiment and express yourself by figuring out what you want and asking yourself that very important question, because a lot of people nowadays they don't really follow that thing. They like to imitate, and they like to imitate a lot of people, but they don't really know the reasoning behind that. It's a bit philosophical, but uh, I mean, well, in the sense that uh, uh, everybody likes to copy things, and now with the social media and everybody, they're imitating things. What I want to say is that if you are interested in doing what you want to do, by all means go for it. If you're not yet sure, go ask yourself that question. Sit down with yourself, and if need be, listen to music, listen to all the music that makes you happy, and just go write down something that you really want to do and pursue it. I mean, we all have this one life, and in this one life, you know, any time of the day you could go, but the question you have to ask yourself is, what are you willing to do to say that you're fulfilled once you're gone, you know? And I know it's a deep it's a
That's a
deep
deep.
thing. Yeah, my intention there is to make sure that everybody knows what they want. It's not about what he or she wants that makes me want to do that. It's just that if she's happy, go ahead. He's happy, go ahead. And I'm happy the way I want to be in my world, in my realm, where I do what I do, and I discover things that I've never discovered. And the challenge. I like to always go through the rabbit hole of discovering new things, that and putting that into a different perspective. So yeah, that's my thing. I hope I haven't spoken too long for that. Yeah.
That wasn't long, but
So
man,
yeah,
it's good talking to you. Like, thank you for being on the podcast and like
thank you.
everything,
Thank you for featuring me
all the
twice. I
blessings,
mean,
man.
thank you so much. Yeah,
All right, man.
thank you so much. Yeah. All right,
Yeah, we
that's good.
wait. Yeah, I'm just cut it out. Hey, Rajiv, how to connect with you via social media?
Uh, in order to connect with me, folks, you could connect with me via Facebook, uh, Facebook, Twitter. Instagram at Rajiv Doraiswamy. That is Doraiswamy. And of course, you could subscribe to my YouTube channel. And I also have a blog with the same name, rajivdoraiswamy.blogspot.com. And of course, you could listen to my podcast as well, The Rajiv Show, which is available in YouTube and of course on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, Radio Public, and all the other good stuff. So with that, I mean, connect, collab, reach out. I'm always happy to listen to you guys, and I would love to, feature you also in my podcast
Dude,
episode
we had a good
one
episode
of these
today,
days.
man.
So yeah, thank you again for adding me into this conversation.